Today, we will explain a film released in 2010 titled Attack. The film begins by showing a group of people who are getting ready to do bad things. These people are the most wanted terrorist group in the country, and they are led by a man named Raymond. Raymond is so bold that he even declared war on the government on TV. To make matters worse, he also took some soldiers as hostages. The government didn't take this lightly and immediately sent their best soldiers to save the hostages. Arjun is the leader of this troop, and he is very good at his job. They all set up a plan to catch the terrorists by surprise. During their mission, Arjun meets a civilian who is wearing a bomb all over his body. This poor guy was forced by one of Raymond's men to detonate the bomb when Arjun and his team arrived. Arjun is a brave man, and he tries to calm the person down while also disabling the bomb. Finally, he tells the young man to leave right away to keep him safe. Shortly after their mission, Raymond's troops returned, and a fight broke out. Even though they defeated all of his army, they couldn't find Raymond himself. So, Arjun ordered his team to go home. However, while leaving the building, Arjun noticed a suspicious hole in the wall. He destroyed it and found out that Raymond was hiding inside. Finally, they caught Raymond and sent him to prison. After a year, Arjun was at the airport when he accidentally bumped into a woman who was in a hurry. She almost fell, but he quickly helped her. However, as a result, the woman kissed him, which surprised Arjun. The woman apologized and left, but he couldn't stop thinking about her. As it turned out, the woman was Aisha, a flight attendant. Arjun and Aisha coincidentally ended up on the same plane, and he couldn't stop looking at her. It seemed that the kiss from earlier had made him fall in love with her. However, Aisha felt embarrassed when she realized that Arjun was looking at her. At that time, Arjun didn't want to miss an opportunity, so he gathered the courage to meet Aisha. Initially, she didn't believe that Arjun was an officer, so he immediately showed her photographic evidence of him in his uniform. After this, she was convinced and began to fall in love with him. After exchanging phone numbers, Arjun and Aisha grew closer as they spent more time together and found that they were compatible with each other. They eventually started officially dating. One day, Arjun went to the airport to pick up Aisha and surprised her with a bunch of white flowers. However, their happiness was short-lived as terrorists suddenly attacked everyone at the airport. As an officer, Arjun took on the responsibility of fighting the terrorists alone, while Aisha, a flight attendant, tried to evacuate people to safety. Despite his valiant efforts, Arjun was shot in the leg, leaving him weak and vulnerable. Aisha, who was also shot, rushed to help him but was unable to save herself from the attackers. As a result of the tragic incident, Aisha lost her life, leaving Arjun in a critical condition. He was taken to the hospital where he remained unconscious and weak. After all of that, Arjun was unconscious for almost a week, and his mother was heartbroken. However, a few days later, he began to wake up and called out for Aisha, which made his mother cry as she knew that she had passed away. The doctor then came to see Arjun and informed him that he was completely paralyzed as the gunshot wound had destroyed his spine. There he was in shock and felt like he was living in darkness. He even contemplated to hurt himself as he felt that his life had no purpose anymore. Thankfully, he had a loving mother who promised to take care of him forever. One morning, Arjun was watching the news on TV when he saw the face of the young man who had led the terrorist attack at the airport. His name was Hamid, and Arjun recognized him as the person he had helped during an ambush at Raymond's headquarters. The news also revealed that Hamid was Raymond's biological son. Knowing that, Arjun was speechless and felt that he could no longer fight back. Meanwhile, in another part of town, the government officials were gathered together in a meeting. They were discussing a plan to capture Hamid, who had been eluding them for a while. Among them was a minister named Subramaniam who had an interesting proposal. He suggested that they use humans who had superpowers to capture Hamid. Initially, the other officials found this suggestion to be absurd and dismissed it with laughter. However, Subramaniam elaborated on his proposal and explained that he knew someone named Dr. Sabaha who was currently working on a cutting-edge technology that could be implanted in humans to give them extraordinary abilities. He suggested that in the future, soldiers could be equipped with this technology to make it easier for them to capture Hamid as he spoke. The other high-ranking officials and ministers started to take notice and consider his idea. On the other hand, in another part of town, Arjun was lost in thought when suddenly someone attacked him from behind and covered his mouth. He couldn't fight back because his body was completely paralyzed. To make matters worse, the attackers also hit Arjun's mother and stole her ring. Fortunately, they spared their lives and left. At that time, Arjun was devastated because he felt powerless as a police officer and a son to protect his own mother. The next day, Subramaniam got permission from the government officials to use superhuman methods to catch Hamid. He immediately met with Dr. Sabah to discuss the technology needed for this plan. He gave Dr. Sabaha a list of potential soldiers who would receive the superhuman technology. However, Dr. Sabaha rejected all the candidates because she believed that her technology was not meant for fighting but for treating people with disabilities. She explained that if her technology was applied to a disabled person, they would become incredibly strong. On the other hand, if it was applied to a normal person, they could become disabled. Upon hearing that, Subramaniam was immediately reminded of his friend Arjun, who was completely paralyzed. Without any delay, he went straight to Arjun's house and told him that he had a mission for him to catch someone named Hamid. At first, Arjun felt offended because of his condition, but Subramaniam explained that he had a plan to attach him to a sophisticated technological tool that could make him recover and become much stronger. After hearing this, Arjuna agreed to the mission and sought permission and blessings from his mother before heading out with Subramaniam. Upon arriving at their destination, Dr. Sabaha explained the risks involved in the operation to Arjun. Despite having no hope other than the operation, Arjun immediately agreed to it without thinking twice. Finally, the operation began. After the operation was completed, Arjun regained consciousness, but he still couldn't move and felt a lot of pain. Dr. Sabaha explained that this was a normal reaction because the technology was still in the process of syncing with his brain. As the pain subsided, Dr. Sabaha asked Arjun to move his hand, which was initially difficult, but gradually he began to gain control of his body. Then he attempted to walk, but it took some time for him to adapt to the new technology. Over the next few days, Arjun worked hard to train his body and adapt to the technology. Thanks to his strong determination, he eventually made a full recovery. Dr. Sabha then connected him to the superhuman technology, which gave him access to government data, including the wanted and criminalists. One night, Arjun went to the city center to seek revenge on the robbers who had broken into his house and beaten his mother. Using the technology inside him, he was able to track down the robbers' location quickly and went straight there. As Arjuna arrived at the scene, the robber became terrified upon realizing that he was able to walk. Then he boldly demanded the return of his mother's wedding ring that had been stolen the day before. But the robber refused and instead dared Arjuna to a fight. Without hesitation, Arjuna overpowered the robber and retrieved his precious ring. He was eager to leave, but was confronted by the robber's cohorts who tried to gang up on him. Undeterred, he took on all of them in a fierce brawl, emerging victorious. However, he suddenly noticed the approaching police and decided to make a quick exit to avoid any further trouble. Later on, Arjun sought refuge with Dr. Sabha, but his attempt to evade Subramaniam's notice proved futile as Subramaniam reprimanded him for his reckless behavior. Subramaniam reminded Arjun that the technology she implanted in him was meant to capture Hamid, not to engage in violence against innocent civilians. Arjun explained that he had only fought back against robbers who had stolen from his home and even chased after his paralyzed mother. He reassured Subramaniam that he would soon succeed in capturing Hamid. As the day unfolded, it revealed a government building that was the next target of Hamid's group's covert attack. Meanwhile, Dr. Sabaha was en route to the same building to discuss the latest developments in Arjun's condition. Shortly after, a convoy of trucks arrived, which turned out to be Hamid's undercover men in disguise as the minister's aides. They requested permission from the guards to enter, but the guards, who were very strict in following protocols, asked for confirmation from the central guard in the control room. Unexpectedly, the guard at the control center was taken captive by another member of Hamid's group, forcing him to give unauthorized access to the disguised men. Soon after, all the trucks were allowed to enter with Hamid and his troops already inside, all set to wreak havoc and destruction upon the government building. On the other hand, Arjun pondered on how to apprehend Hamid. Then, he suddenly received vital information through the advanced technology implanted in his body. He discovered that Hamid and his troops were currently inside a government building. Without wasting a moment, he contacted Subramaniam to relay the intelligence he had gathered. Fortunately, Subramaniam was not yet present at the building since he was scheduled to have a meeting with Dr. Sabha. Suddenly, the building was struck by a missile attack, putting everyone in great danger. The security forces promptly sprang into action, securing the safety of the president, while Hamid's troops launched an assault on the building. Soon after, the assailants managed to overpower all the guards and took the president hostage. They also held hundreds of innocent people captive. Meanwhile, Arjun and his team geared up to rescue the hostages and capture all of Hamid's troops. In response to the attack, all government officials convened an emergency meeting to discuss the situation and formulate a plan of action. Shortly after, it became apparent that Arjun, along with his elite troops, had arrived and surrounded the building. Meanwhile, inside the building, Hamid attempted to negotiate with the government officials by demanding that all troops be withdrawn. He threatened to kill hostages if his demands were not met. However, if the government were to comply with his request, he promised to release the hostages. The officials quickly deliberated on the matter, and Subramaniam put forward a proposal to withdraw all troops except for Arjun. At that time, Subramaniam managed to convince the others that Arjun was more than capable of handling the situation on his own, as he had superhuman strength that was equivalent to that of soldiers. After hearing this, the higher-ups agreed to the plan, and all the troops were withdrawn, leaving Arjun to face the situation alone. Arjun then made his move by sneaking into the building through the air vents, while Hamid believed that all the troops had retreated, and so he kept his promise by releasing hostages. Meanwhile, Subram instructed Arjun to hack into the CCTV system so that they could monitor the situation inside the building. Then, he quickly completed the task and proceeded to defeat Hamid's troops who were guarding the CCTV control area. Meanwhile, Hamid made a second request to the government. He asked for his father Raymond to be released in exchange for the president's release. There, Subramaniam heard about this and urged the other officials to stall for time since he was confident that Arjun was already taking action to resolve the situation. On the other hand, Hamid's men were threatening Dr. Saba. She realized that the situation was becoming increasingly dangerous, so she contacted Arjun using her smartwatch. Shortly after, Arjun located her, but Subramaniam ordered him not to take any action since it could jeopardize the safety of the hostages. However, he was determined to help Dr. Saba because she had previously saved his life from paralysis. Long story short, Arjun managed to eliminate all of Hamid's men who were threatening Saba. After successfully neutralizing the threat, he took Dr. Saba to a safe location. Shortly after, Hamid arrived on the scene and was surprised to find that all of his men had been eliminated. However, this was when he realized that there was still a member of the military who was operating against him. Sadly, Arjun was caught, but he quickly contacted Hamid and bluffed that he would arrest him just like he had caught Raymond. Hamid realized that the infiltrator was Arjun, the same person who had arrested his father. To show that he meant business, he killed one of the hostages, knowing that made the government very uneasy, and they ordered the release of Raymond. Meanwhile, Subramaniam was not happy about what happened, and he contacted Arjun to ask him to kill Hamid. Then, Arjun pretended to surrender so that he could get closer to Hamid, but unfortunately, one of Hamid's men hit him from behind and broke his technology machine. Then he fainted. Thankfully, Dr. Sabah received a signal on her smartwatch about the damage to the machine, and she quickly opened her laptop and tried to fix it remotely. After much effort, Dr. Sabah finally succeeded in restoring the technology, but surprisingly, Arjun remained unconscious. On the other hand, Raymond was in prison waiting for his release by the police. Soon after, he had boarded a plane and was headed back to his hometown. Meanwhile, Hamid had submitted a request to the government to prepare an airplane for him to fly to Ecuador. As for Arjun, he was still dreaming while unconscious, and in his dream, he met his girlfriend, Aisha. There, she told him that she was gone but had come to his dream to convey her love for him. After hearing these words in his dream, Arjun regained his senses and immediately fought back against all of Hamid's men. In the end, Arjun managed to defeat all of Hamid's men, but he soon discovered that the location had been bombed. Then he quickly contacted Subramaniam and informed him that the place was likely going to be blown up remotely by Hamid. At that time, Arjun urged Subramaniam to stop Hamid's car because it contained a remote control for the bomb. However, when the soldiers tried to stop the car, they found that Hamid was not in it because he had already switched to another car. In this dangerous situation, Arjun stumbled upon a hole that connected to the outside of the building. He explored the hole and managed to escape on a motorcycle. Then he chased Hamid, and with the help of technology, he was able to quickly locate Hamid's position. On the other hand, Hamid had reached the airport and was getting ready to board his plane. The plane was ready to take off, but suddenly Arjun appeared on his motorcycle and drove towards the plane. There, Arjun saw that the plane was about to take off, so he drove his motorcycle straight into the plane, causing it to crash and not take off. Arjun held a grudge against Hamid and beat him to death on the spot. After killing Hamid, Arjun quickly took the remote control case for the bomb and attempted to defuse it with his knowledge and expertise. He was successful in defusing the bomb. Once it was confirmed that the bomb had been defused, the president and the other hostages were able to safely leave the building. Meanwhile, Raymond, who had boarded the plane, didn't go home. His whereabouts remained unknown. The film ends. The moral lesson from this film is that you should never help someone who wears a bomb as it might lead to falling in love, getting shot, and becoming paralyzed.